Power on.
The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Tech podcast feed.
My name is Kilo Loy. I'm the day shift manager on level 5. I'm speaking to you from the command center on level 8. We are, at this moment, in control of the facility.
Is that the best you got?
How long we hang on, how far we get, how many of us make it out, all of that is now up to us. We have deactivated every floor in the facility. All the floors are cold. Wherever you are, right now, get up. Stop the work. Get out of your cells. Take charge and start climbing. They don't have enough guards, and they know it. If we wait until they figure that out, it'll be too late. We will never have a better chance than this. And I would rather die trying to take them down than giving them what they want. We know they fried 100 men on level 2. We know that they are making up our sentences as we go along. We know that no one outside here knows what's happening. And now we know that when they say we are being released, we are being transferred to some other prison to go and die. And that ends today. There is one way out. Right now. The building is ours. You need to run, climb, kill. You need to help each other. You see someone who's confused, someone who's lost. You get them moving and you keep them moving until we put this place behind us. There are 5,000 of us. If we can fight half as hard as we've been working, we will be home in no time. One way out. 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 One
It's TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast.
Woo, it is time for some TIE Fighter Renegades. And this time I get the great pleasure we are resuming the show as it was meant to be, because I am not alone. I am being joined by none other than my brother, Robin Freebeard. Rob, welcome back to TIE Fighter Renegades, baby.
Oh, it's good to be back.
Yeah. It's amazing. You know, we don't live that far apart from each other, but yeah, we're still doing this via Zoom.
Yeah. I mean, we see each other all the time and
right.
Like, oh, we forgot to do a show.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, we've got some stuff to catch up on for sure. And we have a main subject that we want to get into, and then we will be we'll see what other fun stuff we might bring up towards the end. So you want to make sure you listen to this one all the way through. But you know, now we've got Bad Batch season 2 going on. We're not going to get into that here. Mandalorian season 3 is coming. We're not going to get into that here, but you better believe Rob and I are going to be talking about that. We're going to pick up the pace on TIE Fighter Renegades here. Don't you worry. But something that we haven't talked about yet at all, and maybe on the Sovryn Technica Patreon, I've kind of brought it up at points, giving my little reviews here and there of how Andor was going, which yourself, Rob, me, and Ellen, we've been watching it together. We go hang out at your place and we just all crash on your couch. And have Dexter jumping all over us and, and just watching some Andor. I guess, we really want to get into that. We want to do a review of that because we haven't done so to date. And I do think that this is a show that continues to run under the radar, even though just about anybody that watches it is like, hey, you got to watch this, but I don't think it's getting the same, shall we say, like cultural permeation that The Mandalorian received, among other things. So I guess we'll open this up and it's going to be a very, we're just doing a high level full season overview, which is really the best way to look at it. I don't even know how much tell me your thoughts on this, Rob. I don't know how much I even like really reviewing like a single episode. Stuff's just not written that way anymore. Like
it's written for binging.
Right. Exactly. In fact, I've said this with many other shows. I think there's a lot of shows where when you do binge them, you get a completely different experience. And it actually ends up being a far better show than when you watch it episode per episode, like once a week.
It's funny you mentioned that because I just went through a binge on rewatching The Expanse.
Okay.
And I'm kind of doubling down on how this is like basically one of the greatest science fiction shows ever made.
Damn. Well, that's one that I watched like week by week, and it was still great then. I can imagine a good binge watch of it. Yeah, that's got to be pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's the first time I binged it because I same here. I watched it week by week.
Have you done I don't blame you for not. Have you done a rewatch of Obi-Wan by chance?
No, I haven't. But you know what? I've thought the same thing. I'm wondering how does this going to play in a binge watch.
Yeah, I mean,
I've certainly thought about that more with Obi-Wan than say Boba Fett, because I just don't think that show can be, completely redeemed in any way.
Yeah.
other than a complete re-edit. I mean, like we said, like that show had terrible pacing issues.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, man, I wish, and we'll certainly, it'll be interesting to watch season 3 of Mandalorian, and kind of put that in perspective, because I feel like, so what ended up happening, of course, with Book of Boba Fett, which everybody knows, is that, a couple episodes, like you go 4 episodes, and then you get a couple episodes that are basically like the Mandalorian season 2.5, right? They almost have nothing to do with Boba Fett whatsoever. And really, I feel like it should have been the reverse. Like all of this could have been a B story running alongside the A story of The Mandalorian. Like, I think if it was presented as kind of being a side story within that, it could have been way more interesting than the inverse happening, where The Mandalorian is kind of the B story of Boba Fett's A story. So
yeah,
anyway.
I mean, it might have even been written that way, but I mean, you have to admit, I mean, that doesn't work as well in terms of marketing.
True. Well said. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'll still love the show just because it finally puts the, well, actually it doesn't put the nail in the coffin. It actually rips the nails out of the coffin of Boba Fett, where, when we were fans years ago, we would say, we'd tell people, no, Boba Fett lived. He got out of the Sarlacc, right. I mean, we all read Heir to the Empire. We all read, Twin Ion Engines of Destruction, whatever, or Twin Engines of Destruction. We read all this stuff, but everybody's like, oh, no, it didn't happen in live action. So it didn't fucking happen. And it's like, well, now guess what? Boba Fett did survive that. So, deal with it, fuckers. At the very least, I'm glad for that. But again, we're not really here to a nice sidewind of where, where we've been going, how we got to here, and how Andor is really outside of Obi-Wan, how Andor is really, kind of the new live action hotness.
I mean, it's almost outside of everything else in Star Wars.
Yeah, it really is. Which might be, well, I mean, let's get into it. Let's get into reviewing this thing. So it is a show that takes place 5 years before the events of Rogue One. Do I have that correct? I believe I do. And Diego Luna, they didn't bring in any younger actors other than when you get flashbacks to when he's a kid, but Diego Luna is back from his role, in Rogue One. And I think he looks, as far as look overall, I mean, you wouldn't be able to really tell the difference between his performance in Rogue One and him looking, somewhat younger, even just by a couple of years, or 5 years in this case, in the show Andor, as the character of Cassian Andor. All right, before we deep dive, let me just ask this overall, because we brought up Book of Boba Fett, we brought up Obi-Wan. There were no flashbacks, and correct me if I'm wrong, there were no flashbacks in Star Wars until The Last Jedi.
Yes.
Would you say that's true?
No,
yeah.
that's definitively true, because I remember there being Comic-Con like panels where Pablo Hidalgo says Star Wars doesn't do flashbacks.
Right.
And obviously that didn't hold.
No, it not only didn't hold, like it's a standard now. To do it's or at least it seems to be an absolute standard. Even the Rise of Skywalker did a flashback, right, with Luke and Leia fighting, or sparring, I should say. Flashbacks have become a de facto standard in Star Wars. How do you feel about that? Because we've gotten into everything. Andor, Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, it's everywhere.
I mean, I'm fairly indifferent. It does give the writers another tool in their toolbox to tell a story, which is fine. I mean, I'm not a minimalist in the terms of handicapping your writers and
sure,
not giving them enough room to actually tell a story. This is actually why I didn't have a problem with them basically canceling the old EU at first.
Right.
At first. And I'm sure I'm going to piss some people off saying that, but that was my read on why they were doing that. Was basically they were trying to untie the hands of future writers to tell their stories. And there's and I'm sorry, but there, as much as I love Heir to the Empire and some of those EU books, there's a lot of baggage there.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I think, admittedly, I think a bigger part was, and maybe you'd even agree, that like Disney just didn't want to have to pay the writers. I mean, they wouldn't anyway, even if they did use their shit. We certainly know those stories. Like,
sure, that was probably the primary calculus there. Yeah, no
doubt. Yeah. But yeah, I hear that, and I can appreciate that as well. Certainly now I look even more fondly upon the old EU.
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, I said the old EU has baggage. I mean, like the new Star Wars has more baggage just in the short time of
exactly.
It's been around. So
exactly.
I mean, if I knew they were just gonna, trade in some garbage for a metric ton of garbage, then I would have. Yeah.
Well, I guess back to the idea of flashbacks. I mean, my feeling on it, like I get it, and it can be a tool, just like can untie the hands, just like we were talking about with the getting rid of the old EU. I gotta admit, I love George Lucas's writing and directing chops in his ability to tell you the history of a character in such epic ways. And like, I mean, they're kind of, broad's not the word I'm looking for, but they're kind of vague, but I think there's real power in that. For example, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, like describing his history with Luke's father, left things very vague, which also allowed for so much of the exploration of, Star Wars's history that we've gotten, not just since Disney took over, but really the past 20 some odd years, 25 years. But also like even in episode 3, when, we're talking about Plagueis the Wise, and like, you didn't have to do a flashback sequence of, Sheev stabbing his master or however that went down. He just told it in this like amazing scene in this operatic, they're in this opera house essentially, and he's kind of telling the story. And so while it's great to untie the hands, like I think we've sort of, I don't know, just that artsy ability to explain history and make you want to know more, that a flashback doesn't always make you want to know more. It kind of tells you how it is. And I think we've lost that a little bit, but at the same time, I mean, there can still be, vagaries, which we'll probably talk about a little bit in Andor anyway.
I mean, I do agree with what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Another great example of that is actually what got me really excited about The Mandalorian in its first season.
Mm-hmm.
Is, when the Ugnaught character is trying to teach Din Djarin how to ride those creatures, and he keeps falling off and having trouble doing it, and Din Djarin's like, I can't do this, and just like, the Ugnaught guy's like, what are you talking about? Your people rode the great mythosaur,
right?
And you like, can't handle this. So I mean, and I agree. That's exactly what I was thinking at the time when I heard that. This is like a real return to form in terms of like the George Lucas style of storytelling.
Right. I mean, even the way Filoni would do, like when the explanation is made of the Darksaber, and how that ended up getting created, that was all done like in a very artsy style, where it wasn't a flashback sequence. It was just like watching the flame and shadows in the background that took the shape of the varying, of the Mandalorian Jedi and all that. And that was really cool. So, I appreciate part of Star Wars is, to me, its greatest strength is its cool factor. And part of that cool factor is the very artistic ways, very clever ways that it can explain history, without like actually showing it to you. It's almost a Hitchcock move. And I really like that. But at the same time, I mean, some of these flashback sequences can work out very well.
You're also kind of like, rubbing against the grind of just writing in Hollywood these days, which is,
sure.
The ethos seems to be, show, don't tell.
Yeah. Right. Good point.
And unfortunately, Dave Filoni can't write everything. I mean, he's just one guy.
Yeah. We could only hope. But, yeah, well,
let's get those. Let's spin up those Spirides clone cylinders.
Yeah. Oh man, I have a theory about where we won't get into it here, but I have a theory about where Omega is going to go, the character of Omega from Bad Batch. Because obviously we know Boba is Alpha, and like they really wanted to make sure that Omega like survived, and all right, I'm not going to get into the theory here, but I have a theory. all I'm going to say is a second Clone Wars, and what was it? Was it Epic Tales? What was that toy line that Kenner was going to do in '86?
Oh yeah, the one that where they Dark Horse started pulling some of the concepts for Dark Empire.
Yeah, and like
Toy
Tarkin
Galaxy did a really good video on that back in the day.
Yeah. There's this toy line where Tarkin was going to come back, and they were going to start, like the Clone Wars were going to start all over again. So anyway, I'm putting that out there. and that's all I'm doing. I'm not going to like deeper dive on that just now. Maybe when we do talk about Bad Batch, I will. But anyway, definitely check out that Toy Galaxy video. If I think of it, I'll put it in the show notes so people can check out what that's about.
It's the title is Star Wars Lost Sequel, Star Wars: The Epic Continues.
That's it. The Epic Continues. I thought I said Epic Tales. It's The Epic Continues. There you go. Bingo. Yeah. So anyway, I'm just going to leave that right there, and we'll keep on rolling. But you mentioned writers, how Filoni can't write everything. Well, this was one of my first very something that made me kind of trepidatious about Andor initially when it was announced, which was this was being written largely by Tony Gilroy. And Tony Gilroy, now the reason he was brought in is because he ended up being the guy that, according to Disney, not the fans, according to Disney, saved Rogue One, the movie. From apparently a messy state that it was in. Of course, I don't think we'll ever really know the truth about that. Rob and I, in previous TIE Fighter Renegades episodes, have regularly and rightfully, and many other Star Wars podcasts have as well, complained about Tony Gilroy. Why? Because Tony Gilroy can come off as a bit of an asshole for saying that, I'm not a Star Wars fan. That's why Disney brought me in, and of course, Star Wars fans are like, wait, you're not a Star Wars fan? What the fuck are you doing writing our movies?
Well, it's not even just that. Is that he kind of boasts about not being a Star Wars fan being his writing superpower.
Yeah, exactly.
So if
He
it
really
wasn't,
rubbed
he
it in.
wasn't such an ass about it, then maybe I'd have less a problem with him being not being a Star Wars fan. I could deal with the writer on
Right.
Star Wars not being a fan. I could
Right.
not deal with when he proudly boasts about it being his strength.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, now he has kind of changed his tune, and I'm sure it's partly for marketing to say that he has become a Star Wars fan since. But I guess that does beg the question then. So what exactly is this guy's pedigree? All right, he's not a Star Wars fan. That's, his claim superpower, but why exactly was he brought in for these sorts of things? Well, to some degree, Rogue One is a heist movie, and heist movie is, I would argue, a subgenre of spy-fi, not sci-fi, but spy-fi, of spy fiction, espionage stories. And Tony Gilroy actually ends up being one of the finest writers and directors in the espionage space, best known for his writing of what I argue to be, or certainly the original trilogy of it to be, not Star Wars, but The Bourne Identity. I think he did tremendous work with those movies. Those are fantastic films. Of course, a lot of that has to do with Matt Damon, but certainly Tony Gilroy had to put pen to paper. And ultimately, I think Andor is spy-fi. It is an espionage show in a very real sense. And so, I'll say this right at the beginning. I thought the show was phenomenal. I think it's one of the best pieces of Star Wars that's been done to date. In fact, when Rob and I and Ellen, and we were all watching it, there were many times where I said, I think this show could end up being better than The Mandalorian. We got to give both of these shows time. Go ahead. What do you got?
I will.
You think it's better than The Mandalorian?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
the overall quality is just, it's better.
It's unbelievable, the scale of the show.
And just not just the scale of it, but like the message.
Yes.
Messaging and this really just goes back to the genesis of Star Wars, which was supposed to be, anti-war, military state. It was Star Wars was a response to the Vietnam War.
Yes.
Like explicitly.
Yes.
According to George Lucas.
Yeah. And the entire prequel trilogy is an anti-war film.
Yeah.
like ultimately. No, I agree. So, and I want to talk about that. Just to finish the point. Why did the show work so well when you have someone who wasn't a Star Wars fan doing all the writing for it? Because this is ultimately an espionage show. Or at least that's a big part of it. There's more to it. And I want to get to that component, which is going to speak to what you're talking about, Rob. But it's an espionage show. So you bring in a guy who's written one of the best espionage trilogies ever. Okay, it's going to work, because Star Wars is like heavy metal, where you can put in any instrument you want and the metal song is still going to be fucking amazing, right? Star Wars can work that way. You bring in whatever instrument you want, whatever genre you want, and you can really mix it in. For fuck's sake, the Bad Batch is the A-Team. Whoever thought that could come back? But so Tony Gilroy, I think, actually ends up being a brilliant choice for this, and it works. Now, the other thing that I feel like Andor really is, I feel like they're really doing a Star Wars version of the Revolutionary War, of the American Revolutionary War, which kind of speaks to what you're talking about, Rob. I think where it is, it's certainly, anti-authoritarian, anti-tyrannical, which some would argue the Revolutionary War was about those things. Whether I agree with that or not, it's another story, but bottom line, some people would argue for that. I like what you're saying, that it's really getting back to the very rooted messages of Star Wars overall. But on a high level, I don't think you can, that in some sense, that's a whole review in itself, saying, no, this show's better than The Mandalorian, because most people consider The Mandalorian the best thing since Return of the Jedi. Do you want to expand on that more, Rob?
It was.
Yeah, well, right, it was. Yeah. But there's a new king in town, folks.
Right.
Yeah, bingo.
Go ahead. The Mandalorian is, and we're not dissing The Mandalorian at all. The Mandalorian is great entertainment. Fantastic. The best bit of Star Wars we've had since Rogue One. Honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, now you basically you come with a series that really, like I said, it strikes at the root.
Yeah.
And it's just that much more.
Yeah. 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 Well, I mean, one of the most powerful things, and we talked about this very quickly, you and I, when we first started watching it, how quotable this is. Like, there's genuine nuggets of beautiful wisdom in this show that you don't realize you missed it until, or like that you missed that being a part of entertainment until you get it again. And it was just, I mean, there's so many fucking quotes. I was going to pull up a page of just all the quotes from the show because there's so many to pull from. Like, rule number one, if you if you don't control it, don't carry it.
Right. Yeah. That's and they know what they're doing. And I know they know what they're doing because, they've gone and posted the various monologues from this show on their YouTube channel. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the stuff that Luthien was saying, was just, you just want to write it all down. It's really amazing. Or even the little quotes, even ones that Andor would make, where he says like, power doesn't panic. Like, that's not power. Just amazing. Just these quick little snippet lines that are just so full of truth. Unbelievable. So, yeah, I mean, as you can tell, Rob and I are both, we thought the show was flat out amazing. We couldn't wait, to catch the next episode. Yeah, it's been a while since I felt that way too.
Right. Same here. Yeah, and this is one where, we didn't binge it, but it still worked. And the reason I think that it still worked was because the episodes were so fucking good, you couldn't help but keep thinking about it. Like you were thinking about it all week.
Right.
Even just thinking about, this is the importance, in my opinion, of writing material that you want to quote, like, in your life and like integrate, because then you want to say those quotes and it keeps you thinking about the show. It's just one of the most brilliant ways, to really hook an audience, in my opinion. And also it makes the show valuable more than just, simple entertainment. Not that there's always something wrong with that. Do we want to break down? Do we want to go over like some of the cast and talk about some of the storyline, Rep?
Sure.
Yeah. So let's do that. Of course, like we said earlier, Diego Luna. This guy's just, frankly, dare I say, exotic. Like his what was not his accent. Okay, I guess I'll go with his accent. Like, everything about him just makes you pay attention to the guy. How do you feel about that, Rob?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. Andor was a cool character, or not cool, but was an attention grabbing character, even in Rogue One. Like, in the beginning of the movie of Rogue One, when he's getting the information from the guy, and the guy screams, "It's a planet killer," and he's talking about the Death Star, and he just shoots the guy before the stormtroopers come over, and it's like, wait a minute, this guy's in the Rebel Alliance. These are the good guys. It's like, oh, no. No, these are terrorists, and they're going to act like it at times. And he delivered on that.
He almost stole Han Solo's intro.
Yeah, right.
He shot first.
He will shoot first. It might not be Greedo, but it's close enough. Boom. So,
Greedo had it coming. This guy, like,
no, he was a good guy, right? He's he's giving you information about, and he broke his arm, and he's giving you information about the Death Star and everything. It's like, and you're gonna kill him. But it grabbed your attention, and he did it so well. Like, his acting, and I'd never seen Diego Luna in anything before, and he just instantly had you. And I think that continues in, kind of. It's all I can do is say his exoticness just continued in this show. And he has a great way of looking very weathered, even when he's not, he's younger at this point and perhaps not as experienced as clearly he would be, the much darker character in Rogue One. But you're really getting that feeling of origin. And a lot of that comes down to Diego Luna's, just his acting chops, in my opinion.
Yeah, he looks good looking like shit.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, and this was, like, let's call it, this was a super dark show in itself. It opened up, like, the first episode, you're basically in a brothel, you're in a bar and like they're just shy of Cassian paying for sex.
It was definitely more grounded.
Yeah. I mean, and same deal, like we said with Rogue One, where he's just blowing this guy away. I mean, he just shoots these two dudes, and like he's never done it before, or at least that's the suggestion. But yeah, very grounded, very dark show, very adult show. I think easily the most adult Star Wars might have ever been, at least in live action.
Yeah. In fact, I remember us having a conversation after one of the episodes that we watched together, saying, like it would almost completely take us out of it if a Jedi or Darth Vader or any of like the main big characters showed up in the show. It would be a huge distraction from what they were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, because the show is so visceral, so real, that if you brought in anything too fantastical, yeah, it would throw you right off. I agree with that.
And yet they were still able to pull off something like the Eye, which was holy shit.
Yeah, what beautiful effects. Yeah. Let's take a moment on that. I want to take just a quick break from the cast to talk about that. The effects in this show, like the production level, was just unbelievable. I mean, I didn't see a single flaw, which I cannot say for Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like that show felt very cheap at times. This show did not feel cheap in the slightest, probably because it's related to Rogue One, which ultimately Rogue One is maybe not its Disney's most commercial success with Star Wars. It's clearly its most fan and critical success, I would say.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I can almost guarantee that this cost more than any of the other shows that they've put out thus far.
Yeah.
And I can say that with a high degree of confidence because this show was initially the first show in the pipeline. They were building sets before Mandalorian season 1 even came out.
That's a good point. We forget how, because I remember now there are times where we were recording TFR, and in those episodes we're like, is Andor ever even going to come out? Like, right. Because it was in production for so long. That's a great point to bring up.
And we never heard anything about, production issues or troubles or things holding it up. Mm-hmm. No, they were just taking their time and putting a whole lot of effort into this, and it shows.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and remember how early they said, yeah, it's going to have a season 2. Like the show hadn't even come out. In fact, it was even like a year and a half before it would even come out. And they're already saying, oh yeah, this is getting a season 2. I mean, I think
well, they've got a timeline plan. I mean, there's only going to be 2 seasons from what I understand, because the end of season 2 is supposed to take up to right up to the moment that Rogue One begins.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Which that's a shame. Honestly, I would have loved 5 seasons of this because it is 5 years that they could have traveled. I think that would have been great, but I get it, Anyway, so yeah, but I mean,
the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long.
Somebody had to quote Blade Runner who's coming. So anyway, right on. But I mean, so effects wise though, I mean, would you agree with me? I mean, I didn't see a single flaw. I thought this was a stunning show.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's here again, they did all this before even all of the technology with, things like the volume had even matured. That was kind of all being done with the Mandalorian Book of Boba Fett. So they were doing this old school.
Yeah. And I think you do get a good whiff of a lot of the practical effects within it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on. So, all right.
I mean, just Luthien shop. I mean, that is just a smorgasbord of, the prop department having a field day.
Oh yeah. I could picture like the story group going in there. It's like, okay, here's this Gungan shield. Put that over there.
Yeah.
There's
Palin base.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much cool shit in there. So much history. That that's one thing. Like if you're Star Wars sweaty, like you can have so much fun just looking in that shop. I almost wish we were like back in the 90s and you could do the QuickTime VR websites where you could look around, the entire thing, and they just put up a QuickTime VR of of Luthien shop and you could just pick apart everything that's in there because man, yeah, so much history. Yeah, amazing. So well, let's continue on with the cast list a bit here. Kyle Solier. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but this is the guy that played Cyril, who was used to great comedic effect as well. Right. He was the deputy inspector for the corporate authority, I believe.
Right.
Yeah. So
the corporate sector.
Right, for the corporate sector authority, which is a nice callback from they brought that faction, quote unquote faction, back in the Shadows of the Sith book, but also this is a callback to like the old Brian Daley Han Solo trilogy books.
Right, I was going to say there was Han Solo in the corporate sector. There was even a West End Games source book specifically on that
right
faction.
Yeah, so that was a nice touch, and it really. This is something where, like you mentioned earlier, where if you brought in something, if a Jedi showed up, it would totally rip you out of it, right? I mean, one of the things that was amazing with Rogue One, as grounded as I felt that was, like when Darth Vader starts showing up, or when the lightsaber ignites, really, everything just goes up to 13. Now, you kind of had to bring in Darth Vader at that point because you needed that bigger, badder guy than everybody else, even Tarkin. In this one, it's kind of it's a slow build, and it's a slow build that I think plays very well into Rogue One, eventually to the Vader scene, because there's no stormtroopers. Like, you're not getting any stormtroopers, and then suddenly when stormtroopers do show up, everything goes up to 12, like everything gets taken way more seriously. So I love the fact that they brought in what are effectively police, and nobody likes them, that being the corporate sector authority. And like, this is another amazing thing about this show. If you're a fan of the Empire, you can hate the corporate sector authority. If you're a fan of the Rebellion, you can hate the corporate sector authority. This brought fans together, on both sides. because we all hate the same people. So
I mean,
go ahead.
I mean, here again, the messaging in the show is just great. I mean, like, all cops are indeed bastards.
Yeah. Even the stormtroopers think so. That's so funny. But this guy, Kyle Solier, I mean, he was dynamite, annoying as fuck. You couldn't stand him for a second. And just hilarious in all the demeaning and right ways, I guess, for a character.
And they show us how he got to be that way.
Yeah. He's basically got like an old Jewish mom, and let me tell you, that's not fun. Or an old Italian mom. Pick your culture.
I'm just straight up narcissist. I mean,
Yes. Where's your tie? That's not. You don't have that on, right? What do you like all that stuff? So, but I mean, again, the actress was just phenomenal doing that. He was a really like steal the show character, because like, he was just so genuine and he was so over the top and so seriously comedic, but he delivered it so sincerely that you completely bought it, and it didn't come off like, it was a joke, but it didn't come off as corny. I didn't think. It came off again as sincerity, and that's what you really need to make a character like that work. And
he's a true believer. Yeah,
exactly. Right. Amazing. So let's carry on with some of the cast. Adria Arjona as Bix Kayleen. So this was kind of the love interest for Cassian. I think that's fair to say. A character that worked. I'm sure we're going to get a lot more out of her in season 2. Certainly allowed for, like, she did this is a character who went through a lot of torture through machines that we would later know better being attempted to be used on Princess Leia in A New Hope. No, it wasn't even that. It wasn't even the droid. It was the sound machine, right, that the Empire developed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Man, wow, that was kind of terrifying, like, and just how heartless, like the Empire was in the implementation of that.
Yeah, I think that was one of the strengths of this show too, is just showing the casual brutality of the Empire.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I mean, I want to keep going down this list a little bit, but I can't think of a single weak actor involved in the whole thing. Like, everybody was top of their game.
Yep.
Everybody was a fantastic choice. But let's move on to Fiona Shaw as Marva Andor. This is a character. Wow.
Yeah.
Makes you cry. I mean, she was something else. playing the guardian essentially of or adoptive mother, as it were, of Cassian Andor, picking him up from his, from that planet, which, by the way, that was something we never really got an answer as to what the hell was going on with that ship that Marva Andor and her partner were, during the Clone Wars, were trying to salvage, because it was a Republic ship, right? They never explained what the hell was going on there, did they?
Yeah, that was weird. Like, they talked about it. It was saying it was a Republic ship, but I could have sworn I saw CIS logos on those guys' uniforms.
Right. Yeah, very mysterious what was going on there and where Andor is from. I'm sure that's going to get some kind of payoff somewhere. And I don't mind even if it's in a novel or a comic book. In fact, I'm amazed there hasn't been any novels or comic books coming out or even announced around Andor. I mean, we've had Andor comics, like the origin of his relationship with K2SO, but I'm really amazed there isn't more material around this. Regardless, yeah, that is a bit of a mystery, but
yeah, I almost wonder if they're going to end up retconning that.
Yeah, I'm a little worried they're going to do that because they've already done that shit multiple times now. Bad Batch, other things, which pisses me off, but that's a separate subject. But Marva Andor, like, let's talk about her for a minute. I mean, she, like, again, it's that sincerity, because I don't feel like you get a whole ton of time with the character. You get a lot, but you don't get a whole ton of time. But like, this is just that woman who remembers how things were. And, as an older woman, she's using a cane and everything. And she just stands up, to the Empire and stands up to tyranny. And it's so moving, so powerful. What did you think of this character, Rob?
Honestly, I think this was like the acting performance that stood out the most.
Yes.
In the entire show.
Yes.
She I'm almost at a loss for words.
Yeah.
And when you see, the last episode, you'll understand why.
Yeah. No, agreed. I mean, I get literal goosebumps, like even now, just thinking about like her performance.
And just a totally, like, when you look at her acting career, this is kind of like a huge departure from the kind of roles you're used to seeing her. I mean, she was in the Harry Potter series. She was, one of Harry Potter's relatives, one of the Dursleys.
Right.
Just an awful woman, and this is like, it's just like complete 180 from kind of the stuff she's done before. And just, I mean, like, I can't imagine that she wasn't drawing from something deep within her to pull off a performance like that. Yeah, no, totally. I agree with all that. And I know from reading up on her that, she's a lesbian, so maybe that has something to do with it. Sure, she understands oppression. Absolutely. Right. Yeah. Something that was kind of a bit of an urban myth, I guess you could say, or a rumor, about the scene where she is, where she's giving the great speech. Okay. In that last episode. And there's a point where she says, "Fight the Empire." There was an urban myth that she actually said, "Fuck the Empire." And they ADR'd, Disney ordered an ADR of her saying, "Fight the Empire." Now it's been confirmed by Tony Gilroy himself that, oh yes, she said, "Fuck the Empire." He said he proposed that to Disney to have her say that. Disney said no, and he did it anyway. Yeah. Which I love that. Yeah. Now they did that to Rutger Hauer too in Blade Runner. Right. What was the line? When he's "I want more life, fucker," when he's about to kill Eldon Tyrell. Right. And what they had ended up dubbing it out is saying, "I want more life, father." Father. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now when you watch the scene, you can actually, and maybe, it could be just the power of suggestion, but I do believe you can see her, you can see Fiona Shaw saying,
fuck the Empire.
Yeah.
She's not saying fight.
That's what I hear in my head anyway.
Yeah. So that, I thought that was really cool. Just more of the power of that character. So, but moving on, and here's what I think was the other stealer of the show, as it were, that being Stellan Skarsgård as Luthien Rael. Certainly a character we still really don't know a whole lot about, but frankly gave so many powerful performances, was one of the main drivers of the show, certainly was empowering even Cassian Andor and his actions within the show. In many ways, the show was very much about him. There's one other character that it was about that we'll get to, we'll just call her MM for now. But Stellan Skarsgård, I mean, Luthien Rael, that character was so amazing. I mean, I don't want to necessarily say cool, but I want to say cool at the same time. And fucking A, man, like his little starship, when that thing draws lightsabers. I didn't say Luthien Rael drew lightsabers. I said when his starship drew lightsabers and started hacking like V-wings in half. Man, that was insane. What the fuck was that? Just out of nowhere, like you just go, whoa, and that was something else for the show. The surprises were amazing.
I mean, not just that. I mean, but the flechette, weapons he had on that.
Yes,
which is like, I don't think we've really seen anything like physics-based weapons in Star Wars before, and I almost wonder if they saw The Expanse and said, we need to have more realism. And then here again, this is just another little kind of tiny thing grounding this series in reality.
Yeah, because this was something that, like in World War II was done, against radar, it was more grounding in reality. I agree. They're like, even though, lightsabers are cancer-causing devices automatically just with powering them. As soon as you light that baby up, woo, tumor city. But other than that,
that's
yes, the
Darth
science
Vader was doing Luke Skywalker a favor, cutting off that cancer.
Yeah, it's like, no, you don't understand. You need a mechanical hand, okay? That hand isn't going to work in like 5 years. Yeah, bingo. Anyway, but I thought Luthien Rael was an incredibly powerful character. Again, had some of the best lines, not just in Star Wars history, I would argue in entertainment history, some real truths. Like, I mean, that rib on smartphones, if you don't control it, don't carry it, was just pure dynamite. But I mean, that's only one of the things that he said out of so many. What did you think of the character, Rob?
Yeah, he's great. I mean, and here's a character who, they did cast playing to strengths that were already evident. I mean, this guy's had such an awesome career. I one of the things that, like, I was not the biggest fan of the recent adaptation of Dune, but casting him as the Baron was, a masterclass choice.
Yes. Yeah. He was fantastic in that. I mean, you could just feel the oil baron, even, no pun intended.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was much closer to the character that was portrayed in the books, whereas the David Lynch movie, I love it to death. I mean, that's still my favorite Dune adaptation to date, but it kind of was a caricature of the Baron from the book.
Yeah, no, agreed. Stellan Skarsgård just completely delivered on this. Unbelievable. And I can't wait. This is one of the main things I want out of season 2 is to just know more about this character. Certainly a lot of speculation around him. Is he a Jedi? Was he like a past Sith Lord? Even some people have said, I mean, I don't know, whatever.
I don't think that's going to be the case. Just here again, because bringing those elements into this story will pull you out of it.
Yep. I agree.
If anything, my prediction is that, this is a character that's probably going to come to a very bad end.
Yeah. And he seems to know it even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's accepted that.
Right.
And he's doing it anyway, which makes the character even that more impressive.
Yeah. And I mean, clearly this guy is one of the initial instigators of the rebellion, yet we've never known who he was. It's the absolute power of the writing and the actor to make us buy it, okay. Yeah. Like, no, I accept that he's one of the progenitors. Sure.
Yeah, yeah. And like one of the things that really shines too is his interactions with Mon Mothma. Whereas like, you know, he knows he's treading on the knife's edge. And
right.
Mon Mothma is trying to, you know, hold to some sort of, you know, unrealistic, you know, moral standard.
Yeah, she has ethics.
Right.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about Mon Mothma. Let's go ahead and get right into that, because this is the other character that I think stole the show, and that I also think gave it a lot of its validity, as well as for longtime Star Wars fans, I think really plants it, even though it doesn't, you know, we're not getting lightsabers, not getting any of that, you know, Star Wars wackiness, makes you want to watch. Why? Because for the first time, really, outside of, say, Rogue One, we get more of the antithesis of the Emperor, right? Because that's what Mon Mothma was. She was the opposite. You know, she was the Emperor's the leader of the Empire. Mon Mothma is the leader of the rebellion, you know, so she is the antithesis to the Emperor. And it was fantastic, of course, that they brought back Genevieve O'Reilly once again, you know, who was originally snubbed when playing a very young Mon Mothma in episode 3, but all of those scenes were deleted. Then she got brought back to play her in Rogue One, which is absolutely inspired. And now she even gets to come back and play her once again in the Rogue One prequel. Yeah, getting to explore this character, getting to know more about this character was an absolute winner. And knowing the hard choices she had to make, some of them very dark, I mean, glued to the TV, you know, because again, we get Mon Mothma in Return of the Jedi, right? But that means that since 1983, in almost 30 years, talk.
Like, for me, it wasn't even just the political elements, but getting to see the behind the scenes, you know, family dynamic of, you know, a politician in, you know, the Republic / Empire, I think was very important. I think here again, that was another thing that really grounded things in reality. Because I mean, let's just face it. I mean, the politicians, you know, in our own reality, pretty sure you can imagine even the quote good ones have probably pretty messed up, you know, family lives.
Yeah, totally. And she certainly had her dealings with that. Yeah, I was just blown away because, again, this is a character that we knew almost nothing about for, you know, almost 40 years. And now we're finally getting all that. And we just got it in spades. Like, you know, I mean, yeah, we got to see more of her in Clone Wars and Rebels as well, which was nice. But this was finally, I think, the real exploration that this character, like, okay, who's in charge of the Rebel Alliance? Now you really know. And now you know why, in my opinion.
I mean, she was a rather significant character in the EU, but they still kind of like held her up as this kind of paragon who was, you know, beyond reproach. Whereas now, like I said, we have a more grounded vision of the human being that she is.
Yeah, no, totally. Because I also feel like, yeah, she would get explored in the old EU, but then even she would get upstaged by Leia and even by Winter. You know, like the character of Winter would really upstage her as well. So I feel like this is the first real time that we really got to explore this character and more of the, what's the name of her homeworld? Chadra, or not Chadra fans? Chandrilla. Like, this is the first time I think we've got to explore more of that culture as well.
Right.
Because otherwise, I mean, in the old EU, it was basically Alderaan light. You know, that's the way it always felt to me.
Right.
Yeah. And so to get more of that just worked for me in a lot of ways. So this is, you know, like that's a winning recipe in this as well. Another winning recipe was another female character, I think, in this show. And something else we got to explore a lot more that I don't feel like, at least in Disney Star Wars, and certainly not in live action, that we didn't get to do so as much, was Denise Go's performance as Dedra Miro in, you know, for the Imperial Security Bureau.
Oh, yeah.
We always heard about the ISB. You kind of got to meet characters in the ISB, but you never really got to see the ISB. And man, did you get to see it in this show a lot. You got a lot of Imperial stuff in this, and I couldn't get enough of that. And she was great. And her relationship with Cyril there.
Oh man, I'm so looking forward to season 2.
I know. That's the part of the show we haven't even. Go ahead.
I just you see the relationship that he has with his mother, his mommy issues. You don't think that's going to come into play when he starts having a relationship with this woman?
When he starts falling in love.
Yeah. Oh my God, this is going to be juicy.
Yeah. No, she was great. I mean, and this is the part we didn't even get into with the show. This show is genuinely funny as well.
Yeah.
Like you get everything in this, which is something that I feel like The Mandalorian didn't always pull off. Maybe it'd be Grogu, that would do it. But like this show was downright funny at times. And, her and Cyril really made a lot of that happen often enough. But I really like that, the exploration of how the ISB works. I thought that was dynamite. Just seeing the dog eat dog world of, moving up the Imperial ladder, which we always kind of expected and certainly got plenty of explicit or implicit, hints to.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I can point to, and I will take Tony Gilroy at his word in saying that he's become a Star Wars fan. Because I don't know how you could have portrayed the ISB in this way without having, at least perused over the Imperial Handbook.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree completely, because this is not the CIA. Like it's really not.
No.
Tony Gilroy understands the CIA, but this was not written like the CIA. And I can't really think of any intelligence agency that would operate this way, because honestly, it would fail, which is more or less what's happening here. So that worked. I mean, even just getting to see the holograms of the Imperial symbol spinning around was awesome, in my opinion. I just loved getting to see the world more in that sense. So yeah, great job there. She was able to pull off some amazing comedy, but at the same time be serious as a heart attack, particularly with torture scenes and everything. I thought she was top notch. Great choice.
And just her doggedness of kind of pulling these threads to suss out this burgeoning rebellion, who none of her colleagues take seriously. I think there's a great quote from Luthien about how arrogant the Empire and fat and satisfied they are, and how comfortable they are, and how that's going to change by what they're doing. And yeah, she is a sign of things to come.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, we could go down, there's so many great actors in this. There's so many great characters in this. Even the younger people involved in it, I thought were great. Of course, Faye Marseille playing Vel Sartha, of course, related to Mon Mothma. She was dynamite, clearly one of the early rebel leaders. I don't know if we'll ever see more of her, but anyway, all of that just worked. And I'm glad we went down the cast list, because that allowed us to explore the storyline, of what happened in the show and what was really working in it.
Well, that's because it's a very character driven show.
Yeah. Which is another reason that it wins.
Right.
It's not all about story. There's character development, and these characters matter. And
as much as we love the lore,
right?
I mean, the characters are what we're here for.
Yeah, no, ultimately, I agree. That's what always made Star Trek great, or what used to make Star Trek great. Anyway.
Yeah.
Less said about that, the better. But Star Wars taking notes, great. Yeah, I mean, this, to me, this show is just an automatic 10 out of 10. Like everything about it, and we've broke down the special effects. There's no flaws. The music, we didn't talk much about the music. Let's talk about the music for just a minute. This is very different for a Star Wars show, or for a Star Wars property of any kind. I was kind of blown away by that, but it worked. It was very atmospheric, and I'm really just amazed at how well that worked. What did you think about the music overall?
I agree with you, but in a way, it's living up to my expectations, and I've been expecting this kind of stuff, because we got kind of a hint of this kind of atmospheric music in the last season of the Clone Wars, specifically with the the whole Order 66 storyline.
Yeah, that's true. We get it in Bad Batch as well. You're right.
Yeah. So I mean, this is now becoming a thing within Star Wars, and I'm here for it. I love it. It's and I think the other thing too is that it works for it had some very earthy tones to it.
Yeah,
which kind of lends itself to the whole, like, because what's really on display in the show is how gritty the universe is, and I know that's always been with Star Wars since the beginning, but now it's like now we're, as Philip K. Dick put it, we're living in the kipple.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I got to give credit to this was done by Nicholas Bertel, but I think Kevin Kiner is the one who really paved the way for this kind of music to be, or for new styles to be brought into Star Wars.
Yep.
And I think it really happened with, Kevin Kiner did 90% of the work for Clone Wars, but he had themes he really had to stick with that. Other than like in the Clone Wars movie, he was able to bring in some electric guitar, which was cool. But it was really in Star Wars Rebels where I think Disney probably Filoni saying, okay, Kevin, go ahead and do your thing.
I agree.
Yeah. Like when they did the episode about, was it going to like the Lestat homeworld? Or they were going through that, trying to find the new Lestat homeworld or whatever.
Lestat.
Sorry.
Lestat is a vampire.
That's a vampire. Very well played by Tom Cruise at one point, but anyway, and other actors. But okay, right. So Lestat, yeah, thank you. Purple Wookiees. So let's just make it
funny
simple.
because like the original concept art, they very much looked like Chewbacca was going to look like what the Lestat looked like.
Yeah, they pulled that right out of Ralph McQuarrie's work.
Yeah,
So in very real sense, they are purple Wookiees. But anyway,
which he unfortunately stole from John Schoenherr, the guy who's famous for the Dune cover art.
Right. Yeah. Oh, you can see it even when you look at those posters. Yeah. Well, anyway, so yeah, like that episode in particular in Rebels, he did something that sounded so alien to Star Wars, and I remember everybody, myself included, talking about it like, wow, what was that? I want that music. Like, that was so wild. I think Kevin Kiner, like Disney finally had the confidence in him to allow him to expand. And he did so. And I think that's what's given the permission to the likes of Nicholas Bertel and others, to go this route. And I'm really glad for it. I'm with you on that completely.
Yeah. I mean, I love John Williams, but we're not going to have him for, very much longer, unfortunately,
yeah, right.
And so having Star Wars be able to break out of, the John Williams mold is not only a benefit in terms of the art becoming less derivative, but also in terms of, like it allows for more talent to come into the franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think when somebody tries to like really mimic, but be more like, it's fine. Like Kevin Kiner will mimic John Williams and bring in his themes when he needs to. Right. But I think the failing is when you try to sound like John Williams, but do original. I don't think that works. You just got to bring in original music and just don't try to be John Williams. Like I applauded a lot of what Michael Giacchino did in Rogue One, as to where the music that was done in Solo was clearly trying to mimic John Williams, partly because John Williams did the theme for that movie, I believe. And that soundtrack's just one of the worst pieces of, piles of shit I've ever heard. Like it's bad. Anyway. Yeah. So I
mean, it's mediocre, which is probably the worst thing you could do in Star Wars is be mediocre.
Right. I'd rather you be bad. That's okay. Like, go ahead and be Mako or something, or write the Life Day song, and I can live with how horrible that is.
Exactly. That's kind of exactly what I was trying to say. Not so much that it was bad, is that it wasn't even worthy of being bad. It was mediocre. Yeah,
mediocre is always the worst. I agree. So, yeah, the music was great on this. yeah, I mean, overall, I have to give it a 10 out of 10. The action, everything, all of it just worked. I really have no complaints. I mean, and we didn't even really get into like the whole prison break storyline was so moving.
Yeah, this is like, okay, Book of Boba Fett season 2, take notes.
Yep.
This is how you do multiple arcs.
Right.
In a single show.
Right. With only a few episodes at that.
Yeah.
We didn't have many with this. What was there? 12 episodes maybe with
Something
this? Yeah,
like
I think it was
that,
12.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So yeah, totally. And by the way, just call out to Andy Serkis. I thought he was incredible in this.
Oh man, there's one way out.
Yeah. I can't swim. Oh, unbelievable. Man, yeah, there's just so much.
I hope they bring him back in some way. I really do.
Yeah.
I know he probably died, but still,
Yep, I'm with you.
I'll be first to admit, post Lord of the Rings, I have not been like the biggest Andy Serkis fan. The character he played in the MCU was just fucking dreadfully awful.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, all I heard was MCU dreadfully awful, and I was like, yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, right.
So, it doesn't even matter what other words were in there. You're
shit in, shit out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, all right. So one other thing to bring up, Forrest Whitaker returning as Saw Gerrera. What I loved, something that this show did with bringing Saw Gerrera back. Saw Gerrera goes nuts by the time of Rogue One. But you actually find out, no, he's pretty justified in being very skeptical of anything the rebellion does, because Luthien screwed over, that one group, and Saw's like, he's like, Saw, you can go try and save him, but you're not going to win. You're going to lose. And I don't know. It just this gave us an opportunity to spend more time with Saw Gerrera, even better than Rebels did, in my opinion. And to understand like how Saw Gerrera gets to the point that he does when we see him in Rogue One. How did you feel about that little bit of storyline?
Yeah, I think it was good. Like, and here again, this is another actor, unfortunately, that I'm not the biggest fan of. But I have to say that his performance as this character was fantastic. I mean, I'm actually really kind of glad that he goes a little nuts, because and every other Forrest Whitaker, movie I've seen he's basically Forrest Whitaker playing Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that you mentioned that, I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. Well, like, what's a movie that I actually think Forrest Whitaker does a great job? Oh, maybe Bloodsport, where he's like this minor character. But yeah, no, I hear you. That's a fair point. But no, he was great in this. Really was. You're right. So yeah, I mean, give me the overall feeling of the show for you, Rob. I mean, are you saying 10 out of 10? Obviously, you're saying it's better than Mandalorian.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's a different beast than the original trilogy, but
yeah,
it's up there. Oh boy, is
yeah,
it up there. So fucking subversive too. God damn. I mean, I'm literally shocked that Disney was willing to put this out there in the world.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. And yeah, because like my more conspiratorial mind that isn't often right, I just listen to it here and there, is blown away that this exists.
Yeah.
Like, this is truly rebellious content, not just because it's about the rebellion. Like there's so much that's rebellious about this. It's pretty unbelievable. But Tony Gilroy can do that. Like, I think the Bourne Identity, I told people, okay, like, how do you get privacy in this world? I've told them, just go watch the Bourne Identity, the original trilogy, and that's going to show you how far you've got to go. And it's not lying. Like that's a model you could genuinely follow. And you walk away from this show as well, where it's like, wow, this show's got a fucking point.
Right. And that's the thing I appreciated about even more so than the Bourne Identity is just basically the ethics of it. Because you've got to, sometimes you got to do some really ugly things if you want freedom.
Yeah.
I just imagined, that the last episode, that, the Marva monologue, like, if somebody today, went up on Capitol Hill and did that kind of thing, like, that's the kind of shit that really does start revolutions.
Yeah.
This is, like, very much evoking Martin Luther King.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and again, like, it was so anti-authoritarian and had such a very clear anti-police message. That's the part that blows me away.
Yeah, right.
Like, it was absolute. I mean, even to the point of almost spray painting on the walls saying "fuck the police." I could not believe it. Yeah.
Just anti, like you said, just very anti-authority, anti-state too. Because I mean, at the end, they're fighting the empire.
Yeah.
The police are gone. They've brought in the military.
Right. And then it goes to that level.
And I, everybody in that, she just brought everybody into reality that, they're living in the shit now. Dystopia was, next door last week. This week it's here.
Yeah, exactly. And it happened so fast. Yeah. There's a lot of, I will say, like, I know going into season 2, obviously we're both super excited for that. Certainly more so than even like Mandalorian. I mean, I'm excited for Mandalorian season 3, but like, I'm way more jazzed for Andor season 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
because there's some unresolved storylines. I still think that the droid, who is very cute and very sad at times, that droid, something happened with that droid.
That's interesting that you bring that up too, because I wanted to get your opinion. You've had some very, shall we say, specific opinions about droids in the Star Wars universe. Yeah. I'm wondering, has that, informed your opinions more or changed them? How's that character of that droid affected your opinions about droids in the Star Wars universe now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know how much I felt that droid like plays into the kind of the larger storyline, but like certainly it fits in, and the storyline is that I don't know, Disney is like hyper pro AI. That's or they're pro, like they have completely inverted George Lucas's treatment of droids, as to where George Lucas saw them as like almost throwaway, other than C-3PO and R2-D2. Like now they're like venerated characters, and I think that this droid really could pull at your emotions, and that does add into, I guess, overall my theory about how like Disney has some kind of running theme of praising machine life.
Yeah, see, I've always had a different take on you on this, and I know we've talked about it before, and I don't know if they're necessarily thinking along the lines that I'm thinking, but you could certainly interpret this way as that Disney is, or at least the writers on these shows and these movies are not so much pro AI, but pro sentience.
Of machine life,
of just, I mean, in any form that sentience takes place, that if it, if it sounds and thinks and it plays on your emotions like something that's sentient and it has an internal emotional world, then it is.
Yeah. I think they're certainly looking at that. I think they have a point with this, and that old theory of mine that like they're setting up a droid rebellion. I mean, that's like explicitly, I think, going to happen now. Like when you read the comic books with what's happening in Hidden Empire, like there's a character that they've brought in that actually did lead a droid revolt, and it's coming back. So like that's happening, like that's something I knew that was on the way.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. In fact, I mean, undoubtedly that they're going to basically play it the same way they did with, the Harry Potter elves.
Oh, yeah. Okay, right. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love getting out the message of the dignity of all species. I don't know that droids are the best harbingers of that message. I guess if I were to be extreme, I would much rather they'd have everybody in the Star Wars universe be vegetarians or something. But yeah,
the corporate sponsors won't like that.
Yeah, no. Purdue's not going to allow for there's chicken that's got to move.
Right.
So,
yeah. Foster Farms to come calling.
Yeah. It's like, we know this is on Disney Plus, but look, those KFC commercials got to go somewhere. You can't. So that's, I get it, and I mean, and those big mutton chops you get at Disney World, those don't sell themselves. So, you got to have these people eating meat. Anyway, all right, I'm going to stop. I'm getting off my horse. So here, yeah. But I think that droid somehow got reprogrammed and is like a spy. I'm waiting for that shoe to drop.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because there's a bunch of times where the droid kept saying, no, like, Cassian, there's something I need to tell you. And they never let him say they never let the droid say what it is. And so that's another one of those mysteries coming up for season 2,
Mm-hmm.
Next to like, who the hell is Luthien Rail? That's kind of like my biggest mystery of the show. Like, okay, what is that? Like, what's going on with this droid? Cool design though. I do like the accordion expanding design, almost like an insect. That was pretty wild. Anyway,
it almost had a and here again referencing another Disney property, but it had a very much a Wall-E design to it, and not just in its appearance, but in just the character design.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, Disney has done that plenty of times too. Like the Sovereign Protectors, and most people probably didn't even notice these things. The Sovereign Protectors in they're not my bodyguards, by the way, but but the Sovereign Protectors in Rise of Skywalker, they totally copied the evil robots from the black hole.
Oh,
they even have the double barreled guns with one above the other, and even like the expanded faces of their helmets, and they're red even. Like they're totally the robots from the black hole. So yes.
deep cut. Nobody talks about the black hole.
No, because I'm the only one that was dumb enough to spend $70 on the Blu-ray for it. So true story, folks. Go look up even the worst Disney film on Blu-ray, like, I don't know, The Pacifier or something with Vin Diesel. That's actually a pretty good movie, but look it up. You're going to spend $50 easy when you could, I mean, amazing films. You could spend $4 on it for the Blu-ray. It's just Disney's so fucking stupid at times, maybe all the time, but not so much with Andor. Andor was great shit, and we needed to get that point out there. So yeah, I mean, this is, if anybody were to go and watch I don't think it's a starting place for Star Wars. Not that I believe there's anyone left that's new to Star Wars, really. But I do think
I'm going to disagree with you. I am going to disagree with you. I think if you've got like you said, if you're there, funny enough, there are people out there who have not watched Star Wars. They know of it. I don't think you can escape knowledge that it exists.
Right.
But if you were trying to get a non-Star Wars fan to enjoy this, the franchise that you enjoy, this might, depending on that person's politics, be a really good introduction.
Yeah, it could be, because I'm thinking about it, like the great pleasure I take in it is getting to see so many things expanded that I've known about for so long. Like Mon Mothma, the ISB, even, a lot of these other things. And even, getting into the start of the rebellion, even earlier than Rebels, or it feels like that anyway. But I think the show can work totally on its own, amazingly.
Yeah.
And I'm baffled by that.
I'm really kind of thinking about your audience in particular.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to be fairly anti-authoritarian, and
yes.
I'd like to think that the people who listen to the show travel in similar circles and have friends like that. And if you've got friends that are just that Star Wars is kid shit, like, sit them down, have them watch this.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. And I'll even go so far, and this might be about one of the greatest things that I could say about anything. This is the most anti-authoritarian show I've seen since Babylon 5, and that's bold. So So there you go, folks. Like you're in for a good time. All right. Well, I think that about covers our review. Anything you want to add in about Andor, Rob?
Yeah, TIE fighters. Goddamn, it was good.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, fuck. We were sitting there on your couch, me, you, and Ellen, and when the TIE pilots are hopping into the TIE fighters, we're just like, woo, yeah. It was so cool.
That was some hot shit.
Yeah, that was great. And even the cinematography they were doing from the cockpits was awesome.
Just the whole sequence. Oh, God damn.
Yeah. Yep, you're right. That was a winner. You're totally right. I felt like I was, there was a 12-13 again, hopping into right. Putting in the CD-ROM and hopping into a TIE fighter. It was so great. Yeah, well done. I'm glad you mentioned that.
How can we not?
No, I know.
This is who we are.
This is the name of the show.
This is the way.
Oh, that was awesome. Yeah, good call. Well, speaking of video games, of course, our reference to TIE Fighter. Rob, man, I think I caught a glimpse of you playing none other than, and we've got a couple things here we want to talk about quick just to wrap up the show. I think I caught you playing Metroid Prime Remastered. Is this true?
Fuck yeah. Fuck yes.
Talk so about greatness.
Good. I mean, this is how you do a remaster. Oh my freaking God. Did they nail it?
This isn't the special edition of the original trilogy, folks. No, this is done right.
Yeah. This is a Nintendo throwing down the gauntlet to, every remaster from the last 10 years, Yeah. Yeah, so I mean that good. Like everything, just the graphics look better. Everything's better. They redid everything. This wasn't just like we slapped new textures on the old models.
No, they remapped everything.
They redid every asset in the game, and they still managed to. And it didn't change or degrade the atmosphere or the because I mean, I've seen remasters of other older games where they completely change the aesthetics of the game, of the original game. And sure, like in terms of resolution and textures, scaling and all this kind of stuff, it looks better, but they just ruined the visual aesthetic and atmosphere of the game. This one, it is like you really, like when you're playing it, you recognize that the graphics are way so much better, but at the same time, like you're playing and you're going like you don't even realize that you're playing a remaster.
Yeah. Now, well, let me ask you this: how do you feel about the controls? Were the controls good?
Oh yes.
Yeah, that worked.
Oh my God. Yeah. So I've been through playthroughs of this game with every form of controller implementation that Nintendo has had. So I played with the original GameCube controller.
Right.
I've played with the Wiimote.
Yeah.
And now I've played with Switch. And this, without a doubt, the best implementation.
That's amazing. So I haven't done this yet, but like it's hard for me to. I'm going to trust you, but it's so hard for me to believe it's better than the Wiimote, just because the Wiimote was effectively a mouse. Right? Like it's effectively a mouse cursor. And, that's still kind of the best way to play an FPS. So I'm excited to give this a shot because, I mean, I believe you. I got to feel that.
When I'm playing it, I feel like, okay, this was always meant to be a twin stick shooter.
Yeah.
I would, and I would go far as say, I'm not the biggest fan of first person shooters on consoles. I honestly think like the first Halo game is dog shit.
Wow. We're going to disagree there, but that's okay. Keep going.
Well, anyway.
Granted, the way I played Halo originally was on PC with mouse and keyboard. So that probably made it a better experience, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I played it both. I've played it
Sure.
on PC, and I've also played it on Xbox, the original Xbox. Still think the game is dog shit in both ways.
I love it. All right, go.
But having like people reference Halo as like the first person shooter of consoles, and
Right.
they just they love the feel of it. Metroid Prime Remastered basically takes those same controls, and I don't know what it is, but the implementation is that much better.
That's amazing.
I don't know if it's just the lock-on controls that just make everything so smooth and fluid, but it really works.
Yeah, I think the reason that they finally did this, because we've known, or it's been said that this was done, like that these games, like that the Metroid Prime trilogy was ready to be re-released on Switch anytime the Nintendo wanted to do it. Obviously, a ton of work went into it.
Yeah, the scuttlebutt is that it's been ready for quite a while now, and this was a very much a intention release. They did this for reasons, and the way they did it too.
Yeah, so I have a theory on two reasons. The first is, I think, and this is just me kind of thinking Miyamoto's a bigger badass than perhaps he is, but right now, one of the biggest thing in gaming is the argument between Sony and Microsoft over, who gets to own Activision Blizzard, right? Over who gets to own Call of Duty, essentially. And I kind of, even though Microsoft already said, hey, we'll put Call of Duty on the Switch, I feel like Nintendo was just like, we don't care.
Yep.
We don't care about Call of Duty. It's like,
they do, because they just signed a 10-year contract.
Well, right. They're like, well, sure, fine. It'll move units. It'll make money. So do it. But I feel like Nintendo was just like, no matter what happens here, that's fine. Have your Call of Duty. We raise you Metroid Prime, because they're just like, we don't need your first person shooter. We have the best, or one of the best ever made.
Right.
And it's only on their console.
I definitely think the Microsoft deal is a very much of a situation of game recognizing game.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. So, well, the second reason that I think that this happened, and you might agree on this one, Rob, is we've recently had some rumors, and we don't pay much. I personally don't pay much attention to rumors like, oh, the Switch Pro is coming at this time, or this is, like, I don't give a shit. Okay. All I care about is whenever Nintendo does a sequel to the Switch, is it going to be backwards compatible with the Switch library? As long as it's that, I don't care when it comes out. I'm not even in a hurry to get it. But I will get it at some point, Anyway, there was a Pokemon Day was recently, and they did an announcement around varying DLC coming out for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The interesting thing is that apparently a developer tweeted out, now, I mean, this did happen. Whether the person is actually a developer, as they say they are, is up to debate. But days before the Pokemon Day release and announcement of the DLC, he called a lot of what ended up being released. And he was the only one that did that. The funny thing is, in all that information that he got right, at the bottom of it, he said another part of this DLC, which did not get announced, was a graphical improvement pack for a new Nintendo Switch, which might even be the name of it when you consider the 3DS and the new Nintendo 3DS, right? That was like literally the name of the sequel. I hope not. Yeah, I hope so too. Like,
I hope they're done with the silly names.
Yeah, no more U's at the end, no more news at the beginning. Okay. So, but this is this guy got so much right. Now he could have just tossed in, for funsies. Okay. The idea that there would be a new Switch getting released this fall with that DLC. But honestly, that makes a ton of sense. In that Nintendo is just like squeezing kind of their last breaths out of the, that's not a Breath of the Wild pun, but, kind of these last breaths out of the, original Switch, and that they are going to come out with a new one. What are your thoughts on this, Rob?
Yeah, no, I think there's some fire where there's smoke here.
Yeah, right. Where there's smoke, there's salmon. And I think that salmon's cooking.
I would not be surprised if Metroid Prime 4 was a launch title for this console. Or at the very least, they do the same thing that they did with the Breath of the Wild, where they released both Breath of the Wild on the new and old console at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I have a feeling that that perhaps definitely the next Zelda game is going to have to be compatible with the next system.
Tears of the Kingdom, you mean?
Yeah. Even though it's coming out, just in a couple months here, have to imagine that they're going to port that game like right away. So you're going to have a Zelda title at launch,
right?
Like I said, you're probably going to have a Metroid title at launch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're ready with the next Mario game yet, but I mean,
doesn't sound like it.
The thing is we haven't like we got Odyssey, but there has been no new Mario game because everything else has been a port from the Wii U.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I could imagine is that, because it was odd that it was never included, was Super Mario Galaxy 2. And if they gave Super Mario Galaxy 2 the Metroid Prime remastered treatment, I mean, that's considered actually, most people, might not realize this, but Galaxy 2 is considered the greatest Mario game ever made by a lot of people, even more so than Mario 64. That would be a winner, like to have a remastered title like that, and add in enough and give it the Metroid Prime treatment. I think that'd be a completely valid launch title for Mario.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to remember.
My point being is that if you're not going to have a Mario title at launch, you've got to have at least 2, preferably 3 really big franchises at launch.
Yeah.
To carry that.
Yep, I agree. And Zelda and Metroid.
Because you're expected to have Mario at launch. That's without a doubt their biggest selling franchise ever. I mean,
yep.
Nintendo is the mouse or the house that Mario built.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
To not have that at launch, like I said, I think that's what's going on here. And certainly if the rumors are true that we're getting the console as early as late this year, it definitely makes sense for them to put out Metroid Prime in the same year.
Yeah, Prime remaster.
4. Oh, the remaster. Kind of
to
basically, to pun intended, prime us for the next game.
Yeah. No, I agree. And we're going to wrap up on this in a minute. I think that all of that makes a lot of sense. And the other thing that makes sense is, like PlayStation and Xbox, they recently upgraded their generations over the past couple of years, from PS4 to PS5. And the popular thing for them to do now, not that they double dip, they don't sell you a version for PS4 and a version for PS5. They sell you a version of PS4 that you can get the upgraded graphics for when you buy the PS5. Now, Nintendo traditionally, like you mentioned, like Breath of the Wild came out for the Wii U and for the Switch, and you could buy them concurrently, but you had to buy both of them, but because of what, PlayStation and Xbox are doing now, I don't think they can get away with that. So the idea that there would be a graphical upgrade pack, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. This is the interesting thing too, is like, and I was very skeptical of the console when it came out, but the Wii U was definitely way ahead of its time.
Yes, sure.
But now what the industry is doing, like Wii U did first, what has become industry standard now, is to basically have, the next console be, part of a continuous lineage. Like, you don't, the console generations are becoming less defined.
Yeah, no, great point. And also too, really, Nintendo was doing this before what I was describing PlayStation and Xbox, because there were games for the Wii U that when you bought it for the Wii U, it also gave you a copy for the 3DS.
Right.
Like I think the Pushmo games and some other ones. So they're already doing this.
Right.
And maybe this justifies the price bump for Tears of the Kingdom, because like it's $10 extra because you're going to get a free version of the game for the next Switch.
I will go far as say too, I think this is the reason we haven't seen Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD move over to the Switch yet.
because they're going to the new Switch.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I'm game for that. I like that. Again, all I care about ultimately, and you can tell me how you feel about this, Rob, all I care about ultimately is that the massive Switch library that I have yet to get to needs to work on the new system. That's all I care about.
It's Nintendo.
Yeah.
Don't hold your breath, Brian. It's
Well,
Nintendo.
with handhelds, they used to do a good job. Like DS could play Game Boy Advance games, and 3DS could play DS games.
Itawa-san's not around anymore.
Well, all right. Now you bring a great point. God damn it. All right. Okay. So, well, let's shift gears from that. Let's wrap the show up. But before we do, we got to make we got a special kind of call to action here at the end that I want to get into, because someone that I am so glad is still around is someone who has been the biggest guest besides Rob and I. The person who's been guest most on TIE Fighter Renegades is none other than the proud barks of Rob's dog, Dexter. He's there. In fact, I think we've mentioned Dexter in almost every episode of the show because we started hearing him barking or something. And it was she's wonderful.
Big of a part of my life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just such a sweetheart. He is such a sweetheart. And I've gotten to spend so much time with him, like I can't even that anyway, that's how I feel about animals. They're people. So, and he is certainly one. So he's going through a hard time right now. And Rob, do you want to talk a little bit about that quick?
Yeah. He's obviously an older dog, and I've had him he's going to be 16 next month. And
that's
I've had
amazing.
him since he was 6 months old. And so what is, not an uncommon problem for dogs of that age is, their teeth, start to wear out just like us, even the Mona Lisa's falling apart.
Yep. Nice Fight Club reference. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's got a dental abscess that's in one of his molars.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a couple other teeth that are infected too. And, unfortunately, because of my situation of life, I have been wanting to take him to the vet to get this taken care of for several months now. But, I've dealt with some periods of unemployment and where I didn't have, insurance to cover it. Well, now it's gotten to the point where, and I feel terrible about this, but that, he needs it taken care of right now. Yeah. As soon as possible. The last week, I woke up in the morning and I could just see it, his left side of his face was all swollen up.
Right.
And he was just in such an awfully pitiful state. And it hurts me so much to see him like that. And, I've been a bit depressed of late and had trouble concentrating on the things I need to concentrate on, and just kind of really just focused on him almost to, an exclusion.
Sure.
And so, unfortunately, the good, I have good news and I have bad news. I have two pieces of good news, actually. The good news is that through my new job, I actually do have insurance for him that covers 70% of the cost of his care. The bad news is that, unfortunately, the insurance requires that I pay everything up front. So I have to pay, 100% of the cost, and then I get reimbursed a month later.
Right.
And unfortunately, I just don't have thousands of dollars sitting in my bank account. Like everybody else, I'm living paycheck to paycheck.
Yep.
So I started, a fundraiser for him called, Co-Fund My Pet. And it's very similar to like a GoFundMe, but it's specifically for, veterinary care. And the way they go about it is, like the money they give you, a debit card essentially that only works with veterinary care facilities. You can't use it at, Walmart or any retailer or anything like that. It's only good for vet care. And I wanted to have that, for the, the sake of transparency. And I've also said, if anybody wants to contribute and then, needs the, the money back once I get reimbursed, I'm happy to do that too. I just want him to get and take care of, as soon as possible.
Yeah. He's such a genuine bundle of joy and such a survivor. He's already been through so much.
Yeah.
He just keeps going.
He's literally a cancer survivor. So a couple of years ago, he had cancer and he beat it. So he's a tough little nugget. I mean, he will get through this. I know he will.
Yeah.
Even at the age of his, I mean, some people would say, it's probably getting, close to time that we're, we should start thinking about, end of life character. No, I'm telling you, if you saw this dog, he would just in his action and behavior, you would see a dog that's not ready to go yet.
No, he jumps around like a bunny rabbit. I've walked him so many times. No, totally. It's amazing. Yeah. So link will be in the show notes for this if anyone wants to donate. And also, if you want to do it via crypto, we can make that happen. You can email me q22@nwo.red. And we'll make this happen. And I don't even want to watch Star Wars without Dexter around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how it is. But
and he loves his people. I mean, he gets so excited when Brian and Ellen come over. Yeah, it's such a joy to watch.
Yeah, he's amazing. So I mean, Rob, anything else you want to get out there about that?
Like I said, just there's links in the show notes. If all you can do is share the link, that would be appreciated too. You don't have to donate anything, and no amount's too small. And I mean that literally. I'm not gonna, snub you for donating $2 like, some former celebritarian stars would have done in the past.
Wow. Well said. No, that's worth it. Yep.
And here again, if it comes back around and where, there's a situation where you need me to return the money, be more than happy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that information is in the link that's in the show notes. All that can get you connected. And of course, if anyone wants to reach out to me about it as well, feel free. So, because we need those. I need to hear Dexter barking in the episodes.
Yeah, I mean, he and I have just been through so much together. Like, he was basically the thing that got me out of bed every morning after my mom passed away.
Yeah.
I have like we've really just, I need to be here for him the way he's been here for me for the last 16 years.
Yeah, absolutely. True member of the Sovryn family here. So again, do check that out in the show notes. And I know a lot of you will be pulling for him, and even if you just want to send a message of well wish, I'm sure feel free to do so. Lots of good news and I don't even know how to follow that up. I just love Dexter so much. So Rob, feeling good going into everything else that's coming up that I'm sure we'll be talking about on TIE Fighter Renegades and Dexter will be chiming in on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's sometimes it's hard to keep your spirits up living in this dystopia that we're in, but the moments like these are what makes it all worth it.
I agree. There's always there's something out there that can be a good time. So with all that said, go check out Andor. Please check out the links in the show notes if you can. And Rob, we'll be doing this a lot more often now because we've got a lot to talk about.
Yes, we do.
A lot coming out, and excited to, of course, watch it all with you. And we will see all of you on the other side.